Hey, welcome to Kate's Crafts. I'm Kate. Today I would like to share with you two different ways to make the same card. One will use a foam tape method, and the other will use a layering technique. Let's get started. These are the supplies we'll be using today. We have some small, flat pieces of sequins and other embellishments that we'll be using. Here are some micro seed beads to give it its sound when you shake it. I have two rectangle layering dies to create a border, plastic sheets and acetate, and we have some tape, more tape, glue, and here we are making our little border cuts with these two dies. I'm measuring it out to make sure it's relatively even, and I'm going to tape the two dies together so that I don't have to measure them every single time and I get the same cut. So here I'm being very careful to pull all this stuff out, and when I take it out of the die sandwich thing that I've made, we will have a border. And you'll see here in a minute what we're going to do with it. So now that I've got 5 of the borders cut out, for one card I have these two different colored papers to differentiate between the two. Here I'm cutting out some acetate, and since it didn't cut all the way through, I'm going to cut that apart and get it separated so I don't tear it. I'm getting all my supplies ready for these two cards, so that way we could just barrel through it. And you don't have to sit there and watch me do both of the cards, because that'd take forever. So now that I've got that done, I'm going to cut the piece of plastic that I have from old packaging, and I'm cutting off the seams so I don't get them on the card. And here there's a little bit of a hole, so you want to make sure that you avoid that when you're making the shaker. If you're using old packaging, you can use cellophane for like gift bags, or not bags, but gift baskets. I have a whole bunch of that from the dollar store, but I have a whole bunch of plastic packaging too that I'm saving, so I have plenty to make shaker cards with. So I'm going to set these guys aside because they're going to be for the layering one. And here is method 1. I am going to use layered foam tape. So I've got that border glued on my cardstock here just to kind of give you an idea of what I'm doing. Once I've got that all together, I'm going to make sure that all the seams of the foam tape are nice and snug together and that there are no holes, because we're going to be using glitter, and glitter is fairly thin and we don't want that falling out of the bottom. So once I got that all done, I'm going to press it down nice and tight. So here I'm just taking some of the tape here, the low tack tape, and I'm going to put it on the back of the card if it will stick, and hold that down because this is where stuff can be messy. And I'm very clumsy when it comes to this stuff, and I really don't need a whole whirlwind of glitter all over my table. So I'm just pinching out little bit by little bit into the well that I've made with the foam tape. And I want to make sure that there's good enough amount in there, but I don't want to overwhelm it, because if you want to put like an image on the back of this or something like that before you put all this down, then you'll want to be able to see the inside. Or if you want to put one on top, you can. This is just the basics. I'm not really jazzing it up with anything. So as you can see here, I'm peeling off the foam tape, and I've already got the acetate stuck to my top part. I guess I didn't show that. I probably should have, but you just make sure it's adhered to the frame fairly well with tape and glue and tape. And here I'm adding more glue, so that way if I make a mistake and don't get it lined up, I can get that lined up properly. So I'm just putting that down there and pressing it nice and tight. Make sure it's all firmly pressed down. And there we go. So I have the first one done. And that is the foam tape method. Next up, we are going to add it to a card base. So I'm just using some double-sided tape, making it all nice and sticky on the back. Then I'll pull that off and I will adhere that to my card base. I guess I probably could have edited this part out, but you get the idea. So once I got all that done, I'm trying to find the proper way to put this down. I always find that low tack tape on the inside to hold it down from opening up really helps me. So I'm going to stand up and line this up, and that way I've got the gray border around it. So there you go. So the second method, this is going to be the layering technique. Basically what you want to do with this one is you just want to glue your frames together. So I'm throwing some glue around the frame, and then I'll stick one on top of it. I'll line that up. That way I can get like an even wall built, if you will. So this is basically what you're doing. Like if you use the foam tape, you've already got that wall built, but when you're layering it, you're building your wall up, or your well, I should say. So I've got the stamping blocks to hold that one down so the paper doesn't curl up, and then I'm going to add another one. And at this point, I think I've already added them all together. So I've got myself a thick piece of card. I mean, you could use like foam sheets too if you cut it out properly, instead of having to do this if you don't have any double-sided foam tape. But this method that I'm doing right here is the same as what I should have showed you with the acetate. I am taking some double-sided adhesive, which is very strong, and I'm going to go around the border of this. And I find if I burnish the double-sided tape, it's a little bit easier to pull up the edges. Sometimes I forget to do that, so if I rub my finger along the edge of it at the end where I ripped it or cut it, I find that they're a lot easier to come up with. So here I am just taking some tape, low tack tape, the yellow tape, I love it, and I'm measuring that out so I can get everything put together. So just putting that tape down, making sure it's nice and flat, and I'm going to take off the release paper so I can put this down. Sometimes if you take a couple of extra steps, even though you don't think you need them, and you just do it anyway, sometimes they pay off in the end, and you don't have the headache. So here I'm kind of going over that tape there, and it's not going to be a big deal because you won't see it. It'll be covered up. So I'm going to give this frame a haircut and trim off the excess hanging over bits of the cellophane package wrap. And you'll have yourself a little window. So once that's done, you'll repeat the process again with the tape and be able to adhere that down. So now you can see that I made sure not to get the hole in that, and that yellow tape's not going to matter. So here I am taking the double-sided tape and burnishing that down with my fingers. And what I like to do is I like to pull up the ends and then just kind of overlap the ends of the tape to make sure that everything is nice and sticky and adhered properly. So you don't get any extra little bits of glitter falling out, because, I mean, nobody really likes to be covered in glitter, do they? I mean, I get covered in glitter at work all the time, and sometimes it's okay, but other times when I'm done work and I go out to like the grocery store, sometimes I get looked at a little weird, like, why is that lady covered in glitter? So you can see right here how I've got that little gap right there. That's what worries me. So I'm going to go in with a little bit of tape there to kind of cover that up to make sure that I've got a nice seal. So I'm going to rip all that stuff apart, and then we're going to adhere it down. So I'm going to go directly onto my card base with this, instead of having like a little backing like I did with the other one. So I mean, I didn't really need the backing on the other one, but I found that it helped better when putting sequins in it instead of, I don't know. Sometimes I don't think things through and I just go with it, kind of like both these cards. So this was kind of like a test run for me to see how would I explain how to make shaker cards. And I just kind of filmed it and went with it. Now, I'm sure there are probably easier methods than what I've done, but as a beginner, I figured maybe I would share my beginner's experience with other beginners, and, you know, even more experienced people could have a laugh at it. I think it's funny. Sometimes my attempts are quite humorous. So here I'm going in with some double-sided tape, and more double-sided tape. And I'm going to peel up those edges just to make sure that I get a good seal. And I taped this thing down to my workstation because I have a habit too of knocking things over, and if things aren't secure, especially when they're covered in sequins and glitter, they can go everywhere. I mean, I'm constantly fighting myself not to dump over embossing powder when I use it. So these little Ziploc bags with the sequins are rather good because all I gotta do is pinch the top shut, and I'm not really spilling anything. You might notice that these aren't the same sequin shaker mix that I used in the first one. I thought I would make this one a little more masculine, considering the border that I chose for this one as opposed to the other one. So, I mean, you can add whatever kind you want in here, just as long as they're flat, without too much dimension. So I'm going to make a little hole like that, like I did in the last one. I didn't really explain that, but sometimes when I make like a little well and pour them in, they don't go flying everywhere, because they're pretty bouncy and they tend to hide in places that are annoying on my desk, like under a paper or something like that, that I could be using. So I'm very careful to pull these guys off. And I'm going to stand up there and line everything up. I mean, here's where I probably could have put some glue down to kind of help with that, because sometimes putting glue down really pays off too. And there you have it. Another shaker card. Isn't it pretty? I just love looking at these things. And there you have it. 2 different ways to make the same card. If you'd enjoyed today's content or found it helpful, please give this video a like. I also welcome you to subscribe, as I post videos weekly. Here's another video I think you might enjoy. Thank you for hanging out with me. Take care.